Good morning, classmates. Thank you for coming out so early for my informational speech. I'm going to talk today about something that's been around you your whole life, been a very big part of most of your lives, and something that you probably never give second thought to about whether it's real or not real. You just assume it is because you've been taught that it is from ever since you've been a baby. I have two books here, very similar. See, about the same size, about the same thickness. They have about the same amount of pages, and they both tell stories. This book starts way back at the beginning of time, when the earth was formed, how the dirt got here, and the oceans, and the plants, and then the animals came, and then man came. This book starts at the very same time, at the beginning of time, how the world was created and populated with animals and flowers and stuff. This book tells of a time hundreds of years ago when man believed in gods. They believed in many gods, and they believed in temples, and they had rituals, and some of them were good, some of them were bad. This book tells the same thing, exactly the same thing. And then, one day, a holy man came, and he told the people that if they followed his God and believed in his God, that they would have eternal life. They would be happy forever. And that's what this book told the people. And the people believed it. And they became followers of this holy man's God. This book says exactly the same thing. After a while, civilizations grew and disappeared and whatnot. And then a holy man came and told the people that if they followed his God, they would have everlasting life, they would be happy, and they would live forever in heaven. This book goes on to tell stories about conflicts and passions and horrors and wars and deprivation and all the things that mankind has in their civilizations. This book has the same thing: pestilence, disease, torment. Oh, it's horrible, but it's in there, just like it's in this book. And then the thing that got me when I was reading these two books, I read this book many, many years before I read this book. But as I was reading this book, something struck me that made me wonder why this book is so similar to this book. So I did a little checking, and I found out that even though both of these books were written hundreds of years before the fact, about events hundreds of years before the facts that are described in them, they both have the same message. Follow my God, and you will have everlasting life. Well, this book was written in 1950 about events that happened from the beginning of time until the 1950s. This book was written over a period of centuries, way back in 00, and it describes all the events that were happening at that time. But people still think that everything in this book applies to 2016. And I began to wonder, how could two books with such similar messages have such different outcomes? This book and this book are almost identical, I told you, in size, in weight, and pages. The only difference that I can find between this book and this book is on the overleaf of this book. And it says in there that the characters and some of the situations in this book are fictitious and only figments of the author's mind. This book has no disclaimer. My point, I think, is that the information that you get out of both of these books is going to be whatever you've been taught since you were little. This book says that you need to read the disclaimer. Since there's no disclaimer in here, everybody believes it right off the bat. So I guess the information I'm trying to give you here is that even though the events that are depicted in this book and the events and the historical information that are depicted in this book, you can go back to archives and recordings and writings at the time, and you can find out about the people, the places, and whatnot that are in both of these books. But the one thing you cannot find in any place that I've looked, and I'd like somebody to show me, is that the lead character in this book and the lead character in this book are not mentioned anywhere else except between the covers of these two books. There's nowhere in history, nowhere in archives or historical writings that you can find either of the heroes of these two books except inside these books. Because, as this book had a disclaimer saying that that person is only in the author's mind, this one doesn't. So, my conclusion is, if you've read this book, and I'm sure you have, then you need to read this book and just see the similarities in it. So that's the end of my talk. This book is James Michener's Hawaii, and this book, of course, is the Bible. So start digging, classmates, and find out for yourself if any of the information I gave you today is worthwhile. Have a nice day, everyone.